Welcome to Life After, a podcast for women to take you from feeling like you're just surviving to thriving, to creating a life you really love. Expect to discover tips and tricks to get there. Each episode will have actionable steps to empower you to make changes. I started this podcast because I've been through it all, from getting out of a marriage with a narcissist to completely rebuilding my life. And now I'm on a mission to help you too. You can change your life. It's absolutely possible. Hello, 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 and welcome to this episode of Life After. It's an interesting one. We are going to talk about something a lot of people don't think about. I know I didn't think about it for a long time. I didn't focus on it for a long time. So often, we end up stuck in life. And when we're stuck, we sometimes don't even realize we're stuck, first and foremost. But secondly, when we're stuck, things become very status quo in our lives. Now, stuckness, that's a technical term, can show up professionally or personally, or in both areas of our lives. Most people aren't stuck because they lack information. We get stuck because we're waiting for certainty. So that's what we're going to talk about today in this episode. What do we do when we're trying to shift our mindset out of that thought of, I'll do it when? Now, when this happens, it can be a real challenge to get unstuck. Partially because we may not know that we're stuck, right? Partially, we might just be in that status quo, just going along, living our lives. Partially, it can be a challenge to get unstuck because getting started is hard. And for me, I've talked about this a lot on the podcast. Sometimes getting started is the hardest part, right? Taking that first step. Mostly, though, I think we stay stuck in all areas of our lives because we're waiting for that certainty. I know I'll make this change when that happens, and fill in the blank for that, right? So why is this? Why do we want certainty before we take action, which keeps us stuck by waiting? Well, there are a couple of reasons for this. The first is that the brain craves certainty, right? And there are several different parts of our brain that are leaning us towards certainty. When we look at our reticular activating system, it's what we focus on. So if we're focused on just, the day-to-day of our lives, getting through is often something I hear that I know I felt and hear from my clients. I'll just wait until, right? We're focused on things that are not going to help us to move forward. Our brain craves certainty through routine and patterns as well. So I've done a few episodes about routine and how important it is and how it has so many benefits, right, for our brain. It can be one of the things, though, when we are in a routine that isn't working for us, it can be, or that is become so stringent and inflexible that our brains can't see past the patterns in our lives or the routines. So that's one reason, is our brain is leaning in towards wanting certainty, right? And trying to find it to keep us safe, right? Our brain is trying to keep us safe always. And it sees certainty as safety. Another reason that we want that certainty before we act is because we think that certainty exists. Oh, I've deluded myself on this so many times, right? And sure, some level of certainty exists, right? We can get to a point in our lives where we go, yeah, no, I know that this is the right thing. But a lot of the time, I mean, change is happening around us all the time. So often, absolute certainty, it's a myth, it's an illusion. It doesn't really exist out there for us like we'd like it to. Another thing about certainty is it often convinces us to avoid risk. And the reality is I can tell you this with all certainty. I crack myself up sometimes. Every major life decision that I have made and a few that I haven't made, but life has just thrown in my path, every single one of them contains some level of risk. Because we're changing, because we're moving, because we're adapting to something new. And that inherently has risk in it. And when we've got higher levels of risk, we're going to have lower levels of certainty. As we think about our brain keeping us safe, waiting for something to happen often feels safer than doing. That's why I always say the first step, for me at least, and I know for some of my clients, the first step is often the absolute hardest. It's the hardest because it's safe to wait. It's safe to wait. It's safe to think about having that thing in the future that you want somewhere down the road without having to take the steps to get there. It feels safer. And as I just said, our brain is going to lean towards that a lot of the time. The other thing, this one, right? When we make that first step, we are using often, not always, but often, we are using all our courage muscles. And so often, when we are doing something new and it takes the courage to try it, to do it, there's no certainty in that. We're moving and we're changing and we're adapting, and there's some risk. Leaning into taking that first action, taking that next step, it builds courage for us and leaves us in a place of uncertainty. So instead of focusing on what might not work, which we so often do, our brain is as humans, our brain is selecting the negative, the pessimistic thought a lot of the time. There's actually some research behind that. I don't have it in front of me. So instead of focusing on that reticular activating system, what if this doesn't work? Instead of focusing on that, we can ask ourselves a different set of questions. We can ask ourselves questions like, how am I stuck? What's one thing I can do to get unstuck? What action can I take? And remember, we only need to take one action to start, one small step to start. And once we do that, we can look around and say, wow, okay, I did it. Now what information is coming from that? What did I just learn from taking that one small step? And then, of course, As we move towards certainty, part of that process is saying what went well, what should I do again, and what could I do better next time. I just want to add a little squirrel side note here. Many people that are stuck in toxic or narcissistic relationships are stuck in the relationship, right? If we think about all those explanations that I just gave of our brain leaning towards safety and routine, feeling more comfortable, right? We are stuck in the relationship. And in some small part, it's because you can't imagine what life would be like to not be in that relationship. Now, this isn't necessarily a romantic relationship, right? This could be, being stuck at work because of a coworker or because of your boss. It definitely, of course, applies to an intimate partner, but it not necessarily. So there are so many obstacles and barriers that can pop up when leaving a relationship, whether it's someone you're dating or you're married to, or is another situation like a boss or a coworker, even a family member. There are so many considerations that people often don't, that people who are watching from the outside aren't considering, but the person in the relationship is acutely aware of, right? There are always financial ramifications to the decisions we make in the relationships we're in. There are emotional impacts. And then we have to think about just the practical things. If it's a romantic relationship and we have kids, what's going to happen to the kids? Where am I going to live? How am I going to support us? What is the safety of my kids look like when my partner and I aren't together anymore, right? And I have to, and this partner who abuses me or in any way, shape, or form, then is responsible for our children on their own, right? This list goes on and on and on. This is what keeps a lot of people up at 3 a.m. at night. So if you're in any one of these situations, and again, if it's with a coworker or a boss, if it's in your professional life, man, that, the financial piece alone can completely dissuade us from wanting to take any kind of risk or move forward or make a change. So regardless of what the relationship is, it's really, really easy to not want to move forward until you have certainty, until you're absolutely certain it's going to be okay and it's going to work out and that you can count on that certainty. I'm so sorry to have to say this. You won't. You won't have certainty. Making those kinds of changes in our lives is inherently risky. And so in order to counter all of those things that our brain wants us to do, and we'll have lots of tips after the break, but basically in order to counter, to move forward, you have to start by taking at least one small baby step. And then look around, evaluate what went well, what did I learn, what can I do better, take another step, and follow through with the necessary actions, right? So a lot of the times when we're in one of those relationships, we spend a lot of time planning. And this is in part what makes us wait, because we're planning at the next turn in the road, at the next marker, once the next challenge has been gotten through, once the next holiday or the next birthday, right? We're planning for some point in the future to take the action. The only way to get certainty is to take the action, because clarity often only comes to us when we've taken some actions and looked at them and reflected on them. It doesn't happen the other way around. We can't anticipate and get clarity. We often can't anticipate or get clarity and therefore certainty until we've done something. Okay, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about all the tips I've got for you about how to get unstuck, around how being stuck creates uncertainty, and how we can really move forward with action. All right, I'll be right back. See you in a minute. Are you finding yourself struggling in a relationship and wondering if you're dealing with a narcissist? You're not alone, and I've got a resource that can help. Get my 5 questions to confirm you're not the problem. This helps you identify the emotions associated with being in a controlling relationship. Just head over to locatecoaching.com/free gift and take the first step toward clarity and confidence in your relationships. Welcome back. This is always my favorite part of every episode, the practical tips for actually making change or making progress in your life. The way to our shift, always my favorite part. I love the practical tips because and so often I focus on those things that we can do that are quick and easy, because who has time, focus, energy, money, right? In reality, to spend 6 months going to find yourself, right? We are here making change every day in our lives as they happen around us. And we need tips for that. We need tips and tricks to do it in 15-minute increments. So before the break, I mentioned that we were going to figure out how to get unstuck. We want that certainty, and we tell ourselves that we will take the action to get those results, and we've got a plan. And it feels like that's how it should work, right? But in reality, life usually works like this instead. We take the action, and then we get some life experience around it, which helps us build confidence, gives us something different for our reticular activating system to focus on, realize that we can do it, even though our risk might be a little high temporarily. We can make the next step. And then all of that leads to more certainty about what we're doing and what direction we're going and how we're going to get there. We don't become certain first. We become more certain around a thing because we're willing to move before we have all the answers. And all I can think when I say that is, ugh, right? Why does it have to be that way? Well, it is. So the other thing that we always do in this podcast is we focus on the reality. What can we actually do? So here are our tips to move towards certainty, get unstuck, and make some progress towards those things we really want to do. By taking those daily, consistent actions. All right, the first tip is that uncertainty isn't danger. I mentioned this before the break. Your brain, our brains, everyone's brain, almost everyone's brain, is wired to keep us safe. And that means that our brains aren't always necessarily wired to help us grow. Our brains often interpret uncertainty as a threat, right? Because we don't know what's going to happen. So when you are feeling particularly freaked out about wanting certainty before you act, right? Because sometimes that uncertainty, that discomfort, we can move through more easily. But for the really big things that feel dangerous to change, right? Whether it is or it isn't, if your brain has interpreted it as dangerous to change, you can ask yourself, am I actually in danger? Right? Is the saber-toothed tiger really going to pop out and eat me? That's the example people use all the time, right? When we're talking about what our limbic system part of our brain is doing to protect us. Am I actually in danger? Or does this just feel like danger? Am I just doing something that's really unfamiliar to me and therefore feels dangerous, or is really uncomfortable? You know, a lot of the times we know we need to make a change in our lives and we know our lives will be better, and it's so uncomfortable to move towards it that our brain says, danger, Will Robbins, danger. Obviously, there's a huge difference between those two things. And sometimes we have to do the work to remind our brain this isn't inherently dangerous. Yes, it's unfamiliar. Yes, I'm uncomfortable. And it's not inherently dangerous. There's a huge, huge difference between those things, right? And many of the things that we find ourselves afraid of, whether it's starting a business, or making a big professional change, leaving a relationship, even something like asking for a promotion, asking for a raise. Oh, this one gets people all the time, right? Speaking on a stage, right? How terrifying is that for so many people? Going back to school, right? I know I have a lot of friends who have gone back to school later in life, right? It's terrifying to do that. And it's not dangerous. Our brain is trying to keep us safe, and we simply don't know enough yet. So get that obstacle out of your way by working through processing, reflecting. Is this thing dangerous? It's not. I can move forward. The next tip that I've got for you is this one. I absolutely love this tip. I love it, love it, love it. You are making a decision, not a lifetime commitment. We're not making lifetime commitments here. Right? That one speaks to me because if it doesn't work, then try something else. Now, that might look interesting. That's the word I'm going to use to other people in your life who are looking from the outside in. I've actually gotten a lot of flack in my life and been told I'm flaky because I'm constantly changing my mind. Well, you know what? Sometimes changing your mind is really effective. It's a really effective way to hone in on that certainty, because as you change your mind and as you evaluate the things you've done, you're creating certainty, right? And we're allowed to do that. We are allowed, without explanation, to change our minds. And so often what can happen, particularly with that last tip, if we feel like if our brain is focused on what can go wrong, we stay stuck when we think that every decision we're going to make is a permanent one. They are absolutely not. Our decisions are not permanent. The kids bought me this little sign several years ago. And I'm not going to, I mean, I have read it 1,000 times. It's hanging in my bedroom, and I'm not going to get it exactly right now. But it's basically, she saw every ending as a new beginning. So when we can shift ourselves a little bit to recognize that our decisions that might end something actually are opening new doors and windows, practice this. Ask yourself, what can I try for the next 30 days? Right? Put a time frame around it. And maybe it's not 30 days. Maybe it's 60 days. Maybe it's 6 months. Maybe it's a year. Whatever it is. Try to make it time bound and see if that helps to create enough certainty that it's going to be okay because you're only doing it for a certain period of time. Another really great question to ask yourself is, what is it costing me to stay stuck? Right? We often don't think of the costs right in front of us that are happening to us in that moment. We often don't add that to the equation. So, what is it costing me to stay stuck right now? That kind of helps time bound it as well, right? So you're not feeling like, I'm stuck now, I have to make this change, it's going to be permanent. Then what if it's a bad decision, right? And we can always ask ourselves, you're going to be pretty reflective when you ask yourself this question. You'll be focused. Is the uncertainty of not knowing where I'm going to end up worth staying in this position? And depending upon what those answers are, make one small decision. Take one small action, and then see what happens next. Create for yourself the reminder that making decisions are not lifetime commitments. And then if even those questions feel big, then you can shift it a little bit. We talk a lot about staying focused on the positive because of things like our reticular activating system. What we focus on is what we get more of in our lives, right? It's where our energy goes. Right? So if you're still really stuck in trying to ask yourself those more forward-looking questions, then you can ask yourself, what if it doesn't work? What if I fail? What if I can't do it? Right? You can ask yourself those questions. You can. Sometimes that gets us off the dime. Be sure, though, to follow it up with, what can I do today that's going to mitigate my risk? What small action or step can I take today? Right? Chunk it down. Chunking it down always helps us. And when we chunk it down and we take that first step, we really build both our motivation and our momentum, right? We take one small step, we get a little momentum, we look around, we see what worked, that motivates us. And when we go through that cycle, and since we're motivated, we take another step, gives us a little more momentum, we look around, we see what worked, we're more motivated. When we go through that starts to build certainty. It starts to build certainty that we're moving towards what we're aiming for. And most importantly, don't be surprised if your goals and dreams change along the way. We are often honing things. That is very, very normal. And that's why we don't want to look at our process as like a lifetime commitment. Now, For some of you out there, I know I needed to practice this a lot, a lot. So it really matters when we think about this. Is this a lifetime commitment, or am I just making one small step? Give yourself permission to change your mind. Give yourself permission. You are not making a lifetime commitment. Sometimes we are so afraid to choose because we're afraid we're going to choose wrong. And this can be in our smallest decisions. Anybody else ever sat at a restaurant and looked at a menu and thought, ooh, it'd be nice to try that thing. I've always wondered, but I'm too afraid that it's not going to be what I like? On our most basic level, we're making decisions because we're afraid they might be wrong. They might not work out. So give yourself permission to change your mind, even if you do make a mistake or two. This is life. They're bound to happen. Making a decision right now about this thing that's in front of you doesn't remove your ability to choose. We have choice in there to make another decision later. All right? And one of the ways you can look at it is you're earning your hard-earned wisdom that's going to help inform you and guide you in future decisions, right? We're building a base and we're adding to that base. And by giving ourselves permission to change our mind, we are just making our foundation that much stronger. All right, the next tip that we're going to talk about is to stop asking for advice. Oh man, I am guilty of this. I want to know everybody's opinion before I decide something. And yes, of course, we want to share with the people that are closest to us. Of course, we want to get input. And when we're uncertain, we tend to ask everyone else what they think. And we use this as a mechanism to not have to make a decision and move forward. We do this so that we can think about and plan more, which means we don't act. Now, the other things that can happen when we're asking for advice is we can be looking for excuses not to do it because, oh, that person said it doesn't work this way. Screw that. Anything can work any way you want it to work. Almost anything. I've had a lot of absolutes in this episode. I keep catching myself. I don't care for absolutes myself, the always and the nevers of the world. So almost always, we'll say that, right? We can use the advice that we're getting to stop us from moving forward. We can use it to procrastinate. Well, it's not quite right yet, so I'm going to go out and get more information. I am so guilty of this. I'm going to do another program. I'm going to get more information, as if I had all the information in the world, it would somehow take away the uncertainty. It doesn't. I actually had a therapist tell me once, many, many, many years ago, and it really helped frame things for me. Now, I am insatiably curious. You all know this, and I am driven to learn. That is just an inherent part of who I am, is I just want to learn. I want to learn more. I want to know. No. And I have to keep that in check. And I had a therapist tell me once, you can't know everything. There's just simply too much information out in the world. You can't know everything. And this was a really long time ago, before we had the internet and social media, and that helps me stay grounded. So in that vein, stop asking for advice. Instead of collecting all those opinions and all that advice, start collecting evidence. This is really one thing I wish I'd started doing earlier, honestly. I really wish that I had spent less time planning and more time doing. It's so easy to change your mind or to procrastinate when your guiding light, your path, your plan is based upon someone else or many others' thoughts and opinions. Look at the evidence instead. What's it look like? Am I doing what I want? How's it going? What's going well? What worked well? What could I do better? And then listen to and respond to those answers. And here's one more thought. When you're building evidence, go into it knowing you're going to fail. You're going to fail. We all fail. Absolutely. We absolutely fail. And even as I say that word, there's a very small part of me deep in my core that cringes every time I say that. Failing is just part of the process. It's what we need to get unstuck and move towards certainty. If you're like me and you cringe every time I say the word fail, I've learned instead to say fail forward. It takes a little bit of the bite out of it. What did you learn from this that you'll do differently later? That's what it means to fail forward. Get some evidence out of it that will help you move forward. Please, 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 this next tip, please stop waiting until you feel ready. Guess how I know that feeling of being ready is never going to come. We're never going to feel ready. We do. It's okay. We show up again. We move towards certainty. When we take those actions, then we start to feel ready. Right? Is it scary? Yep. Yes, it is. Is it worth doing it anyway for most things? Hell yeah, it is. Yeah. And one of the things I found is that when I don't know what's going to happen and I really want to do something anyway, I find that taking those baby steps helps me, build that evidence and get clarity that then makes me feel more ready to take the next step. So you are sort of positively building there. Maybe certainty isn't what you've been missing. Maybe that's not the thing that you need. Maybe you've been waiting for a feeling that was never going to come first. Maybe the certainty that you're looking for isn't found before the first step. It's created because you took it. You don't need all the answers to start. You just need enough courage for the first step, the next step. That's where real certainty begins. Not in trying to predict your whole future. Wouldn't matter even if we could predict it, it would change along the way. Real certainty is in trusting yourself, that you'll know what to do as it comes, when you meet it. One last thought before we wrap up. I've learned the hard way, of course, because that's why we're here, is because I've made all the mistakes, at least twice, that the best question that I can ask myself when I'm either trying to get unstuck or wanting to shift or change something in my life is not, how do I know I'm making the right decision? The real question is, does this move me toward the life I want? When you make decisions to get unstuck, and this question, that question, does this move me towards the life I want, is going to help you make those decisions and take those actions. And then you make those decisions and act on them and move forward. That's when the certainty comes. That's when it happens. Remember, you won't ever discover the entire path before you begin. It's just like a road trip. You all know I love a good road trip. Precisely because you don't know the whole path in advance. Right? On a road trip, you learn as you go. Yeah, you have a map and you follow that map, but you learn as you go. You discover each piece of the journey as it comes. And while that can feel scary, I prefer to see it as exhilarating. Lean in, take the risk, do the action, and enjoy the ride all the way to certainty. If this episode was a good one, if you liked it, if you enjoyed it, please send it to someone you care about or save it for the next time you're feeling stuck and are not sure what to do to get unstuck and how to find some certainty towards, and take that next step towards knowing, moving towards what you want. And if you're not already following the podcast, please make sure that you do. You don't want to miss what's coming up. Finally, you've got this. One thought, one choice, one action at a time. As we wrap up, here's the thing. I've made every mistake. I've literally been there and done that. It's one step at a time, and you'll get there. There's hope. You've got this. If you're struggling in a relationship and wondering if it might be controlling, you're not alone. Download my free PDF at locatecoaching.com/free gift to help you find clarity and confidence. I hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon.